Andrew, you can get the ball rolling. You have been a touch concerned about Ireland right the way through the warm-up games and even last week. To what extent on the back of last night do you say you're confident they're primed for what is the biggest game in Irish rugby in 4 years next week?
Yeah, I don't think you're ever going to go in cock a hoop, primed, confident, ready for South Africa, but they certainly look a lot more ready than they were a couple of weeks ago against Samoa in Bayonne. They've grown nicely and they've shown glimpses of performance that they can put together. We haven't seen that 80-minute performance since France and the Six Nations, but we've seen enough of it to show that they have the potential to get back there. And then on top of that, like that's the tangible. You know, can they get into that phase play that really threatens this South African defence? Can they ask questions of it? Can they make it difficult and break that South African defence down? That's the tangible bit. That's the rugby bit. But the intangible, and Andy Farrell's talking about it there, is the feel-good factor in the team at the minute. It feels like there's momentum. And that goes back to Keith Earls in his 100th game against England. That goes back to Johnny breaking a record last week, breaking a record this week, smiles on faces, Irish supporters all over France having a good time. There's a lot to be said for that, and Andy Farrell's tapping into that.
Yeah, certainly a happy camp, for sure.
Yeah, feels like it.
So you're still, you don't have absolute confidence, but you're softening in your negativity.
I'm borderline positive.
Okay, which for you is, you know, super positive.
Yeah, you're trying to create this caricature here.
No.
And I'm kind of reluctant, but there is. I have been concerned. I think after the Samoa game I was concerned, and against Romania, you can't fix all those problems. Last night, there was enough to show that they, and we'll go through it in a bit, but there's enough to show that they've still got a few tricks up their sleeve. I would just be slightly happier if those passes were just sticking a little bit more, because I think this South African defence is going to be like something they haven't experienced before, and they have to be so crisp and sharp. They have to outsmart this South African defence. You can't go toe-to-toe. I think any other team that Ireland have played over the last, any of the warm-ups or through to the World Cup so far, Plan B can always be go toe-to-toe and beat them up and then get your momentum back. You can't do that against South Africa. You always have to outsmart them. And if your passing isn't crisp enough, then that becomes a want in your game.
I think that's part of the problem with the games that we've played over the last 3-4 months. If we've been very honest about it, we haven't played against a very good team yet. And that's why it's hard for us to sit here and give a really pinpoint accurate assessment of exactly where this team are at, because if we're being honest, I don't think we really know, because we haven't got the standard of opposition yet. That game last night was definitely another step in the right direction. I think it was brilliant to have a period of time in that game where we had to defend a lot, because we didn't have to defend against Romania, and you always want to get tested in that, because there's going to be a huge amount of test next week. But my only concern would be, is South Africa going to really come out of the blocks and shock Ireland a little bit, because they haven't faced anything like that in a while.
Which is not their fault, nothing they can do about it, just a reality of the calendar. So Rob, even just chatting to you briefly before coming on air, it's worth stating, you really were disappointed in Tonga. That is the context for this win. You can't fault 59 points on the board, but you did not think Tonga were good.
No, I didn't. And like you say, you can't fault Ireland at all for that. And I think a little bit of the narrative before the game, after the team selection, was we're very much respecting the opposition. And Andy Farrell was right to pick this team because Tonga are going to be that good. They've got some All Blacks coming back, but I didn't think they were good at all, particularly their front five. I thought they were lazy, they were unfit, they were good at set piece, but in general play, I thought they were very, very poor.
Okay. And that's why Ireland scored some of the tries they did around the ruck, which were brilliantly thought out, really well done, but Tonga was a huge disappointment.
Especially when we've seen what Fiji have done.
Yeah.
Because everybody was excited about Samoa, Fiji, Tonga, but people were probably most excited about Tonga and what they can bring to the World Cup, and Fiji have been incredible. So that's probably what we should expect from these teams now.
Matt, where are you then on Ireland as we've counted down to this game for so long?
Look, what the boys have said is really accurate. I think they're on track. But this pool they're in and their path to a semi-final via their quarter-final, this is going to be cigarette paper stuff. You know, this is millimetres, this is the day, how they turn out. I know they've got a structure, which we'll show later on, that can get around the South African defence if they do exactly what Trimble just said, which is great passing And it's also exactly what Robbie said. If you look at South Africa, the 3 big losses they've had over the last few years to Australia in Adelaide, to Ireland at the Aviva, and to New Zealand in Christchurch last year, teams scored early and put scoreboard pressure on them.
Yes.
And they don't like that. They don't like chasing a game. They like to strangle a game with their forwards. And if Ireland can start fast, which they have done under Andy Farrell, to be fair, for the last couple of years, they've started fast. If they get a scores in front, that will put pressure on them. But if they let South Africa come out, like Robbie said, they come out really steamy and South Africa get their points up, that's when South Africa just absolutely strangle the game. But Ireland have the structure and framework and personnel to get around that. So I think they're right in the hunt.
Shape, yeah.
They're right in the hunt.
Because, Rob, there's a good chance Finlay Bealham could be missing, which means Tom O'Toole will be coming off the bench at tight head, and there's no Keane Healy in the squad, so that's a loss of the next man in behind Porter. Meanwhile, South Africa have the bomb squad coming off the bench. So you do have this nagging sense Ireland could really do with, as Matt said, good start and probably noses in front into the last 10 minutes.
Big time. And I think this is a key point that you don't want to labour, but it sort of can go a little bit unmissed at times when you're playing against the Springboks. That the strength and power of that replacement bench when they come on, they get points, they get penalties, they kick to the corner or else they take their 3. So I would be pretty accurate in saying that I think Ireland would need to be 10 points up with 20 minutes to go.
Yeah, you've got to be. You've got to be. If they're close, that's the strangle, isn't it? That's kick to the corner, maul. They play between the tram tracks, the 5 and the 15, hit their forwards, get their big guys going at you, force penalties to either kick or again go for a maul for the try, and they're brilliant at it. But if they're 15 points, hopefully, which is 3 scores behind, that forces them out of their comfort zone. And that's the 3 games they've lost. They were taken right out of their comfort zone by the scoreboard. And Ireland, Robbie's exactly right. If it's 3 points, the last 10, we're in trouble.
And it's even more important in those last 15, 20 minutes when handling errors are up to a little bit more. There's a little bit more ill-discipline because of fatigue, which then in turn means that there's going to be a few more set pieces. And generally the case in the last 15, 20 minutes of games, you've got more set pieces, which puts even more pressure then on Ireland's replacements.
The bomb squad has been slightly diffused, potentially, with Malcolm Marks not being there. Eben Etzebeth maybe is a bit of a question mark over him. Those are all lifelines for Ireland, especially if Finlay Bealham struggling.
Yes.